All right, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, welcome to Traveling in 2021. What will it look like? I'm Chris Ruoff. I'm the Director of Business Development for the UCI Alumni Association, and I also manage our travel programs. And I have with us here today Noor Bular, who is our assistant. And I'd like you to know that this webinar is being held in partnership with our travel partners. So today we have AHI Travel and Contiki. AHI Travel has been our partner for 25 years, and Contiki has been managing our senior trips for the past 4 years and now offers trips for both students and young alumni. Today we have our experts here with us, Mike Hull from AHI Travel and Ian Kynor from Contiki, who will answer that important question that you've all been waiting to hear. What will travel look like this year? I'd also like you to encourage you to visit our travel page for all of our trips and updates. Nor will put that in the chat. And before we get started, I have a few housekeeping items I'd like to go over with you. You can find all of our online events by going to alumni.uci.edu, and under the Experience tab, you will see upcoming events. So register for as many as you would like and connect and engage with your fellow alumni. And Nora, if you could drop that URL in the chat, that would be great too. Since this is a webinar, everybody will be muted so that we can eliminate background noise and interference. And as your questions come up, and we know you're going to have some great questions for us today, please use the Q&A function, not the chat. Use the Q&A function to submit your questions for us, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the discussion. So there'll be plenty of time to answer your questions today. And this is going to be a very interactive hour. So we're going to have 4 poll questions that we would love your input on. And we'll have 3 rounds of Anteater Travel Trivia during one of the discussions. So you're going to need to pay close attention to those trivia questions in order to be considered for prizes. So pay attention, some really good stuff coming up. All right, we are going to put up our first poll question. And as we do, we'll see the results come in. And I'm going to introduce Mike. So first of all, we just want to get to know you a little bit. So if you could answer which of these best describes you, just so that we know who our audience is with us today. Thank you for participating, everyone. Oh, the results are coming in. Oh, we got a lot of good mix of, we've got students, we've got recent grads and alumni 35 and younger. We've got a mix of everybody. We've even got some UCI faculty and staff. So this is fantastic. All right, keep those results coming in. I see we're still waiting on a few people. Now I'm going to turn it over to Mike Hull. As I mentioned, Mike has been with AHI. He's been with UCI for what, close to 20 years, Mike? So he is the vice president at AHI Travel. He's going to talk to you today about international group, the current state of international group travel and what to expect this year. So as those polling results keep coming in, Mike, go ahead and tell us all about what you're looking at this year.
Great, thanks, Chris. Welcome everybody. Thanks for attending today. It's nice to have you all with us. As Chris said, my name is Mike Hull. I've been working in international alumni travel since 1988, so about 33 years now. Got started in the business as a travel director, escorting groups on tours all over the world. Then went into a trip design and operation role, and since been working in marketing and sales in alumni travel. Currently VP of sales for AHI Travel. A little info about AHI. We were founded in 1962 as Alumni Holidays Incorporated. That's what the AHI stands for. And we pioneered the alumni travel market, starting with a handful of schools in the Midwest, primarily Big Ten schools. And we now work with over 300 alumni associations nationwide, providing cultural and educational tours around the world for alumni association travelers. The bulk of the travelers who experience the tours are in their 60 to 75 age range. We certainly get some younger, we certainly get some older, but that's the core group going on these alumni tours. And all of the tours are led by professional travel directors, local guides, local experts to give lectures and lead discussion. We're based in Chicago, and we're very proud to be a UCI alumni travel partner for at least 25 years. We think it went back even further than that, but it's been at least 25 years. The focus of the discussion today is not really to sell tours. It's not to explore destinations. It's to talk a little bit about the current state of international travel for Americans. And of course, I'll be talking about how we see it through our eyes as a worldwide group tour operator specializing in alumni travel. So I don't have any slides of beautiful destinations. Really here to just talk a little bit to impart knowledge of what the current state of international travel is. Probably one of the questions on the top of your mind right now is, can Americans travel internationally currently? The answer is yes, but there are a number of hurdles, and it's very confusing to try to manage through those and navigate through that right now. One of the issues is that it changes from country to country. So you have some countries with completely open borders, little restrictions. Our neighbor to the south, Mexico, is one of those, for example. On the opposite extreme, you've got countries with completely closed borders, not letting anybody in. New Zealand is a good example of that. You have some countries that are in between there. They will allow travelers to enter, but once entering, they have to quarantine for a certain amount of time. Greece is a good example of that right now. And then you have countries that allow entry, but only with proof that you've had a COVID-free test within the last 3 days or whatever the time frame is. The USA just became one of those countries. Kenya is another country, for example, and there's actually a long list of those. And we do anticipate that at some point that some of these countries may require proof of vaccine before they'll let you in. So you can see that there's a lot of inconsistency around the world. There's no pattern to it. And to make it even more challenging is it's changing frequently. So you can plan a trip to go overseas today, and by the time you actually take the trip, the rules can be completely different again. So can you travel internationally? Yes. Is there a lot of challenges to it? Absolutely. A couple things to help maybe you manage through that a little bit if you are thinking about going overseas. I've got a couple websites that might be helpful for you. One you may be familiar with already. It's the website for the US State Department. It's travel.state.gov, travel.state.gov. This has a lot of good information on it, but I will have to say I find it difficult to navigate. And it's easy to get bogged down in information that's not all that pertinent. So there is another website that I prefer to use, and it's much more user-friendly. It was developed by MIT. It's got a nice color-coded map on it where some countries are coded red, meaning you can't go to them, green, you can, yellow, somewhere in between. And the website is COVID Controls, so covidcontrols.co, not .com, but .co/traveler-entry. So covidcontrols.co-traveler-entry. That is a great site to go. And if you click on each country, more information will pull up telling you exactly what you need to do to go to that country and other good, helpful information. So hopefully that will help you out. The other thing to do is to book your trip through a tour operator like an AHI or like a Contiki, because we're obviously going to sort through all of that for you and feed the information to you so you don't have to worry about it. So that is another option that you have. So shifting from that to talking a little bit about what does it look like to travel right now? In other words, what are the travel suppliers doing out there to try to make you feel safe and have a safe travel experience. And when I say suppliers, I mean airlines, hotels, river cruise ships, so on and so forth. So with the airlines, and you may have been reading some of this in the news, but I thought I'd summarize all of this together. Airlines, pretty much across the board, they've installed HEPA filters in the cabins to be constantly filtering out any viruses that may be in the air and other very small items. They've upgraded the cleaning regimens between flights to make sure that it's clean and safe. They do have very strict mask requirements. This has become pretty much across the board with certainly all of the U.S. airlines and the vast majority of the international airlines as well. Very strict mask requirements. You cannot fly without a mask, and if you're on the flight and refuse to wear them, then the airline, the flight attendants will put you on a blacklist. And I have a couple neighbors that work for American Airlines, and they have confirmed that this is truly happening. That you will be put on a blacklist and not be allowed to fly with that airline for a year or 2 years, depending on the airline. So the mask requirement is very, very strict. When I got on my United flight, my most recent one, a few weeks ago, they even handed me a little sanitizing wipe so that as soon as I got to my seat, I could wipe down my area too to make sure that it was sanitized if I didn't feel that the crew cleaning in between the flights had done a good enough job. So I really do feel like the airlines are doing everything they can to try to make it safe. Obviously, their well-being depends on you feeling safe traveling on them, and they're taking all the proper steps. They also are developing apps to try to help travelers be able to present what needs to be presented to fly or to go to other countries. American Airlines has Verifly that it's developing. United is actually putting it on their own app. These are early in stages, so there's a lot still to be learned about those, but they are taking steps to try to help travelers also navigate the requirements they need to go from country to country. When you then shift and take a look at the hotels, what are the hotels doing? They've really stepped up their antiviral cleaning of rooms between guests. As one guest checks out, another one comes in. Then once a traveler is in that room, they've gotten rid of daily maid service so that you don't have people from the outside coming into the room, potentially bringing virus in. You can have them deliver towels. You can have them, deliver things, set them outside your room, but they don't come into your room to do daily cleaning any longer. They're requiring masks in all public areas. If there's a restaurant at that hotel, it is either closed or set up for with capacity controls so that people can socially distant. And many of those hotels, whether they offered room service or not, are now making room service available. And in the food service area, they've pretty much done away with buffets. You don't see buffets anymore. So even the hotels where you would get your breakfast in the morning, the little breakfast buffet, they've eliminated those. Some of them have replaced that with like a bag of food that they'll have available that you can pick up on your way through. But again, all of these are steps that they're taking to try to make travel safe during a pandemic and make them very COVID-free. Or COVID-friendly, I should say. River cruise ships, so a type of travel that AHI offers a lot of. These river ships are doing a lot of these same things that I just mentioned about the hotels with a few additional items. With a ship, you can control the access onto the ship and off to the ship very, very easily because there's usually just one gangway on and off the vessel. So they can control access on and off the ship. Many of them are using the little temperature testers to take your temperature as you get on and off every time to ensure that if somebody is coming down with COVID, they catch it quickly and early and are able to isolate them. Capacity and controls on how many people they even allow to book the cruise. There have been a number of river cruise lines who operated very successfully through the summer, primarily in Europe. Not for American travelers because we weren't allowed to go over, but for Europeans traveling within Europe, they were able to put all of these items into practice very successfully. There were lots of successful river cruise operations over the summer for Europeans. Then shifting to large ocean vessels, many of the large ocean cruise lines are not operating now. They just simply can't. They will be doing a lot of these same things that we've been talking about for hotels and river cruises, with even further discussions as maybe requiring vaccinations to be able to go on board, et cetera. And we do feel that the large ocean ships are probably going to be the slowest to get back to normal travel again because of the PR issues that they dealt with early on in the pandemic, unfortunately. So that's a bit of what it looks like if you're out traveling, and the steps that are being taken to make you feel safe. The other question that may be on your mind, what is a predicted timeline for international travel to kind of get back to normal, to what we were used to before the pandemic? And that's a very, very difficult question to answer. And anybody who answers it with complete honesty is saying that it's almost impossible to predict. It will most likely be connected to several things, however. One is we need to have declining infection rates. We need to have declining mortality rates from COVID. And we need a good progression of the vaccination. The big question that comes with all of that is how much decline is needed, how much increase in vaccination is needed. And nobody really knows what that answer is. And the reality is that answer probably is going to be different from one country to another, which means that the timeline is not going to be tomorrow we can all travel again. It's going to be a slow, and it'll come out in phases. Some countries early on, other countries later, so on and so forth. Our best guess as a tour operator right now is that we feel that we will be able to start operating in a limited fashion with tours to some countries in June of this year. That is our best prediction at this point. So that is all I had to present at this time. This moment, I'll turn it back to Chris.
Great, thanks, Mike. Great perspective on things. So thank you for your insight into that. We can answer this right now because you were on this subject. But does the new rule of, we talked about this this morning, does the new rule of a COVID test to enter the U.S. apply to U.S. citizens returning from overseas?
Yes, it does. It applies to anybody entering or re-entering the United States. So yes, it does. So if you are going overseas, you need to make sure that you are able to get a COVID test within 72 hours of your flight time that you can present to the airline.
Great. And then kind of a second part to that is, does it apply to domestic travel as well?
Currently, no. You can travel from state to state by airline without having to have any COVID-free test.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks, Mike. So that took care of one question that came in. All right. We are going to put up our second polling question. And this is, during the past year, where did you get the majority of your travel inspiration? Did you use Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, email? Some still like to receive direct mail travel brochures because they're nice and colorful and they look great. But if you have other inspiration, please note that in the comments section. And here come the answers. A lot of Instagram, emails, chugging up there. We do see direct mail travel brochures. Excellent. And then there's some other responses which we'll love to take a look at. So please keep sending those in. We've got about 65% of you that have voted. The number is chugging up. So as we're doing that, I'm going to introduce our second travel expert, Ian Kiner. He is with Contiki, and as I mentioned, they've been doing our senior trips for the last 4 years, and also now focusing on student travel as well as young alumni travel. And Ian's going to talk to us, give us his perspective on what travel will look like in the next year. So Ian, take it away.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you everybody for being on the webinar today. This is very exciting. I think if in a time when we can't be out traveling as much as we would all like, the second best thing is to get a chance to talk about it. And this has been great. And thank you to Chris and Nor for organizing everything, and Mike for all of your insights. It's great to always share a stage with our counterparts in the travel space, and just hear how and what everybody is doing to hopefully get us back out traveling as soon as we can. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and I'm going to look over at Chris for a nod, just make sure that this is okay to jump in here. We're going to do, as Chris mentioned, a little bit of trivia. There's going to be 3 rounds, and I'll kind of run you through what this is going to look like. It's all on the honor system. So grab yourself a pencil or a pen and a piece of paper. It's to have a little bit of fun. There will be a prize at the end, so you want to keep tally. But we're going to show you 3 pictures, and really all you have to do is write down, just for yourself, if you know the location, where that is. And we'll kind of do this as we go through, just to kind of break things up and have some further inspiration. So without further ado, we'll show you the first image. So if you know where that is, just on a piece of paper or a pen or typed into your phone, or just remember where that is, and we'll have everybody tally up at the end. I'll give you all a couple more seconds to take in that picture. I know this one in particular is a destination that you certainly know. AHI is familiar with it, Contiki is familiar with it, very popular in Europe. And we will go ahead and wrap up there, and I will show you guys our destination. Everybody get Dubrovnik? Everybody know Croatia? All right, hopefully we've got everybody at 100 for that first one. We'll have 2 more of these, so hopefully everybody just has a little bit of fun. So again, thank you very much to Chris and Nora, and certainly to Mike. I am not anywhere near as handsome as Mike, so I do have slides, so I hope you guys will all be okay kind of running along with that. But just a quick intro for me. My name is Ian Kiner. I've had the great fortune to be in travel for about 20 years. It was my first job out of school. And it has been entirely focused on travel for students and young travelers just like myself. So it's been a great adventure that's allowed me to meet and interact with some amazing people just like today. Just a quick disclaimer. Because I do have the slide deck, I do have some photos, and every picture in this is all BC. So all before COVID, so no masks on any of the photos. But I will say that even though the pictures are a little bit before COVID, we all will be wearing masks on future pictures. And as soon as we're able to get out and take them, we'll add those into the presentation. So that was just a little bit about me. That's the disclaimer. So Contiki, and I actually just learned this listening to Mike, Contiki and AHI, we share the same birth year, 1962, and we've both been doing what we do and doing it exceptionally for a very long time. In Contiki's case, Contiki is all about travel specifically for one segment of travelers, and that's us that are 18 to 35 years old. So your recent high school graduates, college graduates, students in school, all the way up through their mid-30s. And we've done that specifically so we can fine-tune the Contiki experience to those travelers. And one thing I will say that's common for all of these travel experiences is that opportunity to travel together, that social aspect of travel, to not only meet people in the destination where you're going, but to meet people from other walks of life, whether it be an alumni, another fellow anteater, and so on. And I know Mike alluded to this as well, and I'm going to expand on it in further slides. But with everything we do, it really is just providing that seamless experience where all the details are taken care of and giving you an opportunity to experience things that you may not otherwise be able to or know to or be able to find in a guidebook, and just really have that life-changing experience when you're on the road. So that's a little bit about me. That's a little bit about Contiki. Yeah.
Jens, sorry to jump in. We're seeing your you're in presenter view, and so your next slide.
Oh, it is sharing presenter mode, is it?
Yeah. So
Oh,
yes,
well, that's unfortunate.
Just wanted to let you know there.
Well, you know what? I can pop out of presenter mode, so that's okay.
Don't want to give away the answers to the trivia questions, right?
Definitely not. Definitely not. Excuse me 1 second. Let's get back in there. Is that better?
There we go. Yeah, there it is. All right.
Well, it's all things Zoom these days that we tested it before we all got on the call, but of course it's going to give us a little bit of fits. So what I'm taking on in this, now that I've talked a little bit about me and Contiki and what we do, I'm going to talk a little bit broadly just about some of the things as you're preparing to travel. Of course, Mike gave a lot of great information, some great resources as you're making a determination for travel and other things pre-trip. So pre-trip, one of the things that you can benefit from is the expertise of not only peers and the resources that have been provided, but the expertise of companies that this is what we do. We have people in destination, on the ground, places where you want to go that are understanding what those restrictions are going to be, that are monitoring that for you. And there's an expertise that goes along with that that can extend into you as a traveler. So make sure as you're doing your own research and as you're looking into your next opportunity, that you're taking full advantage of the expertise of those folks that are available to you. So through the UCI Alumni Association, of course, with the partnership with AHI and Contiki, our expertise is there for you. Whether it be a tour company, a hotel, a restaurant, the airline, there's a duty of care, and that duty of care fits into all of those things that we've already kind of covered off. Making sure that the protocols are not only in place, but that they are followed. That each part along the way for us as a provider and for HI as well, that the places that we're taking our guests, that they not only have those protocols in place, but they are adhering to them and they're putting them in practice. You want to make sure on your own travel and health that you're able to travel, that you are ready to go, whether that is that you have tested based on the requirement that you're going to, whether if you have previously had COVID and recovered, that you have a health declaration that allows you to travel. You're going to want to check all of those various requirements with whomever you're booking with, or with your airline or the CDC website or those other resources that were provided, to make sure that you have all of your ducks in a row for your own personal health in order to allow you to travel. Stay in touch with your airlines, right? So the airlines, each airline, they are following very similar protocols, but each airline might have different rules and policies associated with their booking. And of course, stay up to date with communications, right? Once you book, make sure you are watching your email. Make sure you're paying attention to that advice that's coming from your travel provider, from your partner, that's giving you updates on things that you can expect for your particular destination. As Mike mentioned, each destination is a little bit different. So you want to stay on top of those things and watch for that communication that's going to help do it. This one's pretty simple. The must-haves, we all know we need to pack our bags. We need to take a voltage adapter or an outlet converter, whatever else we need. And this first bullet point, I'm going to stress because it's usually not the one that we stress and talk up a lot because it's not the most attractive part of travel, but make sure it is always so important that you have travel insurance. Now more than ever, that's just one of those extra things that you need to have. Make sure you have it, whether it's provided through the program that you're going on or separately. Check the requirements for the destination you're traveling to and just make sure you have that travel insurance. PPE, we all have it everywhere we go. If you're like me, you regularly leave your car with your mask still sitting in the car just to remember, what am I doing, and have to run back and grab it. You're going to want to have your masks with you, whether you're wearing a mask and a face shield, your hand sanitizer, your sanitizing wipes. You know, you board a plane, usually you're going to get that small wipe to wipe down your space. Certainly getting into or checking into a hotel or getting on and off the coach, there will be sanitizer there available. You want to make sure you have that quantity. If you lose a mask, there will be masks typically made available, but they may not be the most comfortable for you. So make sure you have those things. As always, your travel documents are important. But now you may have extra requirements. You may have to show that proof positive or negative test, rather, that you have been tested for COVID. You may have to show other requirements depending on where you're going. You may have to have other documents at the ready, what hotels you may be checking into, and so on. So you want to have your travel documents in order, that you received those and that you've got them either digitally saved on your phone that you can pull up, or in paper form, depending on what's going to be needed. And of course, last but not least, must have the sense of fun and adventure. As excited as all of us are to get back out there and start traveling, the destinations that host us, the people that host us, our local guides, our local experts, I think it's safe to say that they're even more excited to have us there and joining them on trip. So on trip, if you've traveled with AHI before, Contiki before, or traveled independently on your own, a lot of things are going to be very similar, but a few things are going to be different, right? Imagine your arrival or your check-in, your meeting with the group, times are going to be a little bit more staggered. There is going to be the social distancing. So that's something that whether you're checking into the hotel, or we're sightseeing or visiting a museum, or whatever cultural experience we're having, our trip managers and trip directors are going to be very good at reminding everyone on those distancing requirements. There may be differences on board, say a coach, where the group size may have been adjusted to allow for distancing within the coach itself. Disembarking or embarking on the coach or the cruise line, that may be a little bit more organized, where, you know, typically a coach would pull up and stop and everybody would kind of get off. There may be a little bit of organization behind that. Certainly, and Mike mentioned this already, the buffets and the finger foods and the past appetizers and such are going to be gone for a while, but you're still going to be able to get those meals in. You're still going to be able to have that food perhaps taken away with you, or something that's very packaged. So it will be different. There will be things that you will have to adjust and adapt to, but a lot of things are going to be very similar. This picture here would be similar if those two were traveling together. We'd probably put a space in between the travelers, and of course everybody would be masked up, but the destination and the cruise in Thailand would be certainly the same. Before I go into the next slide, the last one that I will just stress is going to be the self-screening, and I don't want to pass that up. This is important for all of us as we travel, to just be aware of our own physical health and any symptoms that we might be feeling. I don't know about all of you, but certainly traveling, there have been times when I've picked up a little bit of a sniffle or gotten an allergy to something in the air that I wasn't used to. These things happen, but we need to be very mindful of them. We need to be aware of them, and we need to be comfortable identifying when something in ourselves is maybe a little bit different than it should, and going and discussing that with our trip director or travel manager, and then following the necessary protocols and steps to make sure that not only are you able to still continue to enjoy your time in destination, but that everybody else is as well, and that nobody is being put at unnecessary risk. So we'll do our next little quiz. So grab out your pencil and your pen to break for a little bit of fun. Can anybody name this location? If you know what it is, just go ahead and write it down. We'll tally everybody's scores at the end. Again, we're just doing it on the honor system. We trust all of you anteaters to keep accurate tally. I hope all of you got this one. And this one is in Egypt. So that is a picture of the Great Sphinx. You see the Great Pyramid in the background. If you put the Sphinx, or if you put Giza, or you put Cairo, or you put Egypt, I think we can count that all correct for that one. All right, just some quick, interesting trends. So, just along with what Mike has shared, nobody can predict exactly what the summer and fall are going to hold. We as well are anticipating being able to have travelers back out on the road in June, but there's so much that plays into that. What I thought I'd take a chance and share with you now, or take this opportunity to share with you now, is just some of the things that we are 100% seeing now and how that's being, and what our travelers are giving to us, the information and what their behavior is. So at the end of 2020, we ran a market survey. We just asked, what are you thinking of traveling? What is travel going to look like for you? And we put a few statements out there, and the four that our respondents most strongly agreed with, where they do have a desire to continue checking off bucket list items. Importance of health and hygiene is going to be very huge as they get back on the road, whether that be 2021 or 2022. They want to start exploring some of those remote destinations. And with all of us having been so isolated and in our homes and doing everything digitally, that opportunity to meet and engage new people is huge. Other respondents for the survey, that's 67%, just shy of 70%, are very keen to travel in the next 3 to 12 months. And whether they were able to travel with friends, family, or what have you, they were not going to allow that to be a deterrent. Over half, 55%, are willing to just jump on a trip, just on a group trip if they're traveling solo. They know they'll make new friends. They know they'll be traveling with like-minded people, so they're ready to go solo. So what are we actually seeing right now, looking ahead into 2021 and beyond? So for Contiki, again, the core of our market is 18 to 35, and about 60% of all of our travelers booked right now fall solidly right in the middle of that, about 22 to 30 years old. About 66%, and this is actually quite common, about 66%, so just shy of 70 there, of all of the passengers who have booked so far are female. Our travelers who have booked solo, just outright, they're not waiting on anybody else. About half of all the bookings that have come through thus far for 2021 and beyond are travelers on their own, ready to join one of those group trips. And then the overwhelming majority of travelers right now are looking for something about 2 weeks or less. So I just wanted to share that with you of just kind of what we're seeing with those 18 to 35-year-olds. And the top destinations, I think this is actually fairly consistent. I don't know that there's anyone up here. Actually, that's untrue. There is one up here that usually wouldn't be, but our top destinations that have been booked so far: Thailand, always immensely popular. Europe, of course, every destination, whether it be Ireland to Italy, to Croatia, France, wherever it may be, is always immensely popular. South Africa, and getting into the bush on a safari, of course. Egypt, always immensely popular. But the one that is a little bit different are those that are doing something a little bit more domestically. So maybe exploring their own backyard, getting into the national parks. I will highly, highly, highly recommend, if you haven't yet taken advantage of that, especially from where we are in Southern California, to get to the Grand Canyon or into Southern Utah with Bryce or Zion. I would highly recommend you do so and take advantage of that opportunity now. So that's about it for trends. I know probably a lot of information, but I wanted to get through all of that. And certainly we're good. We've got plenty of time for Q&A. But before we get to that, we'll do one more trivia. This one, it's not an international destination. It's actually pretty close to home. And hopefully all of you will recognize it. If not, it may be a time soon as we're able to, and as soon as we're able to have those in-person events, go and visit the amazing Alumni Center there at UCI. So that's that for the trivia and the presentation. We will now take a tally. So we'll just ask, and you can put it into comments here, did anyone get all three correct? And if you did, go ahead and raise your hand or throw it into chat. Did anybody get all three correct? Okay, we've got a couple. Did anybody else get two or more? If you got two or more, go ahead and throw your name into the chat. What we're going to do is we're going to save all of that. We do have a small prize from the UCI Alumni Association, as well as AHI and Contiki. We will, for everybody that's got 2 or more, we will at the end just draw we'll pick a name and we'll send you a wonderful gift. So congratulations for those of you that got all 2, and hopefully the 2 that you got, well, I hope they're the destinations that you want to be going to very soon. So that's that, I think, Chris. I will now turn off my screen.
Great. And if we can launch the 3rd polling question. So after hearing all that, we'd love to hear from the audience, which travel destinations would you be most interested in traveling to this year or next year? So we have domestic US, Mexico and Caribbean, Africa, Asia, South America, Europe, South Pacific. So wow, there's some great results coming in. A lot of Europe, Asia sneaking up, number 2. So while those results are coming in, before, we've got some great questions that we want to make sure we get answered, but Ian and Mike, I'll start with you, and then Ian, just a quick summary. You know, this webinar is positioned as what will travel look like, and I know there's a lot of concern on everybody's parts about traveling safely and healthy, and just making sure that when people travel, they do feel comfortable. So Mike, just kind of in a summary statement, what is AHI doing to make travelers feel comfortable this year that or when they travel?
Yeah, Chris, that's a great question. And this is a topic conversation that we've had probably every day in our office since March of last year. But we have initiated a number of things. First, starting with just the design of the trips themselves, the product design. And one of those is that we've reduced our group sizes down to be smaller. So our land tours, we will not take any more than 24 travelers max on any land tour. And the main reason for that is the smaller groups, it's easier to social distance. Most of the motor coaches that we use for excursions and so on are 50 to 56 seaters. And if you've only got 24 people, you can spread everybody else out nicely in the motor coaches, and restaurants, et cetera, et cetera. On the chartered river cruise ships, we've done something similar where we have capped the capacity. So if we're chartering a ship and filling it up with travelers from alumni associations around the country, if it's a 160 passenger ship, which is kind of a common size for river cruises, we won't allow any more than 120. So that's 75% of maximum. Again, that allows for more social distancing in the lounges, in the restaurant, et cetera. And then we can then break the groups down into smaller groups when we go off the ship for excursions. So capacity controls there. We've shifted to do more single stay programs, because trips where you go and you unpack once and settle into a hotel are easy to manage and be more COVID friendly than ones where you're moving from city to city or moving from hotel to hotel. So more single stay programs. We've shifted our focus to include more destinations that have an outdoor element. So destinations like Alaska or Norway, Scandinavia, just more outdoor elements, because being outdoor is obviously more COVID friendly than other. And we've shifted a lot of our stays into smaller towns and villages, as opposed to being in the big major metropolitan areas. Again, it's easier to avoid the crowds that way. But there's also a side benefit of that. The smaller towns and villages provide a more authentic experience in the destination. And therefore, you're able to experience it and see it outside of a big major city, which is really nice. Outside of product design, we are now including, this is something brand new for 2021, we're going to include the medical and emergency evacuation insurance for all travelers at no cost to them. That way, if anybody faces any illness overseas, whether it be COVID or anything else, They don't rack up big medical charges. We've got that covered for them through the included medical and emergency evacuation. We've put our travel directors through special training so that they know how to run a COVID-friendly tour. They know what to do if somebody becomes ill, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have also been in touch with all of our suppliers, hotels, et cetera, and given them a minimum list of requirements that they have to meet for us to be able to bring our groups there. The good news is we've heard back from all of them. They've all agreed to the demands, and they even, the vast majority have sent us a list back saying, yes, we agree to that, and we're gonna do this on top of it, because obviously their livelihood depends on it as well. So that may be a longer answer than you wanted, but we have done a lot of things to prepare for travel when it's back and going again.
Well, that's all very positive, Mike, and just helping people feel comfortable, right, when they're ready to jump in and travel. So thank you for that. I'll throw the same question over to Ian. Ian, what is Contiki doing to make sure that travelers feel healthy, they feel comfortable, they feel safe, they're healthy, and they feel good about traveling this upcoming year?
Well, Mike made it super easy for me to answer this question, because in so many ways, ditto. It's the same. I think one of the amazing things that's happened, certainly amongst our industry, but across travel, across the board, the organizations that we all participate in, whether it be the U.S. Travel Operators Association or the World Travel and Tourism Council, collectively, we've all put in place almost identical procedures and protocols. So whether you're traveling with an AHI or a Contiki or anybody else for that matter, the things and those experiences that you're going to have and what you're going to see on the ground are all very, very similar. From the vetting out of hotels and restaurants, we've unfortunately had to say farewell to certain properties and places where we visited in the past, because they either wouldn't or couldn't meet the standards that were put in place. Some of the really exciting things that I think, in addition to everything Mike had mentioned, that have come from it, is the added training for our trip managers and our team on the ground. Across our entire global footprint, we've employed wellness directors, which is a position created specifically for the time we're in now, where they can be very aware and monitoring almost on a city by city basis what's happening, what are the protocols. And I've seen it kind of in the Q&A, what if the restrictions for one city's this, or that state's that, or this country is this, and having those on the ground resources that are focused 100% on all of those things in real time. So if there is something we need to adapt to, we can. If we're already set, we're good, and all of our protocols match up, we can continue right from there. So I've been very excited about that. But then I will stress the training for the travel directors, the cleaning, the established protocols in place that we're adhering to ourselves, as well as then making sure are being adhered to by our partners. Even our local guides are getting training where they are learning to identify, how do you keep and just make sure we have social distancing. What can you say to make sure somebody is putting on a mask? Simple things that you wouldn't necessarily think of, but that will allow for the seamless experience of all those travelers, and being able to identify, do we need to talk to somebody? Are they showing symptoms? What do we do now? How do we continue to maintain the trip? What are all the steps in putting all those procedures in place? So some really, really fast, some very quickly developed protocols across the tourism industry. And yeah, for so much of it, ditto to what Mike said. And it really is just about doing what we can to help mitigate and to put as much of kind of put that wellness sense at ease as best we can. There's of course no guarantees, and there's nothing that you can completely do, but making sure that everybody and every precaution that we can make is being made.
Well, fantastic. Thanks to the both of you for those responses. And we've got a lot of great questions to get into, but before we do that, we're going to launch our last polling question. And pardon the pun here, but we're going to take your temperature on how you feel about your future international plans. So are you ready to go? Are you ready but waiting? Are you taking a look and see type of attitude, or you don't have any plans to travel abroad soon? So thank you for sending those in. And while those are coming in, we're going to tee up our Q&A session. So first one up is from one of our attendees. Thank you. If you have received the vaccine, do you still need a COVID test? Mike, Ian, who wants to take that one?
I can take it. Yes, you do. As it is currently, as everything is currently documented now, the COVID test requirement for entering into the US, or the COVID test requirements still are required whether you have a vaccine or not. Will that change? Possibly, but for now, yes, you still do have the test requirement.
Great, thanks. And just looking at the polling questions that came in, I'm going to share the results real quick. It looks like there is a pent-up demand here. People are ready but waiting, and they hope to travel, but just not quite sure yet. So it looks like that's the bulk of how people are feeling right now. So thank you for contributing to that poll. That's really helpful for us and for AHI and Contiki. So thanks for that. Next question that came up. Okay, so this is always a hot topic. Many states and cities within the US have travel restrictions, i.e. quarantining before going in and out of certain regions. So how are these travel restrictions being implemented in force? And then our question, they actually gave us a really good URL, the USA Today story on this, but Mike, you want to take that one about how these travel restrictions are being implemented and enforced?
Yeah, the question was domestic travel.
Domestic.
Yeah. AHI doesn't do much in terms of domestic, so this isn't something that that we've been monitoring all that closely. We are aware that different states have different restrictions, but I'm not sure that I have a great answer for that particular question. Ian, do you have anything?
I think the simplest answer to that is the same. We're putting in place the same review process for the trips that we have domestically and for our sister brands. The same review process and requirements for our international trips are being applied to domestic. So if a particular state does have requirements right now that would not be conducive to running a trip, then we wouldn't be able to run the trip. And that is really how we're having to continue to monitor, just like we are for all of our international trips. And I'm sure the same for AHI, that if a 14-day quarantine is required entering into the destination, then it makes it impossible really to run an itinerary through. If it's a test requirement, then certainly we can and will communicate that out to the traveler. But yeah, for domestic stuff, really, we're not doing anything different right now from anything international. The handful of specific trips that we've run have been very specific to areas where there weren't restrictions for international and domestic. And I believe, I don't have any reason to believe we won't continue to do that exact same thing as developments change.
Oh, great. Thanks to you both for that one. Mike, when you were talking about international travel, a question came in from one of our viewers about China. So his wife's family is there. She's not seen them in 2 years. Wondering if she should book now in order to get a flight. So there could be a mad rush, right, when things open again. And whether you see them as one of the countries opening first, last, or maybe in between. China. Well,
it's a very good question. Hard to predict. But I will take a stab at it. Unfortunately, the decisions that are made by governments in terms of opening borders and closing borders are not always based on just health and safety. There's a lot of other things that go into that. They don't always admit it, but that is. And I would have to predict at this point, China's probably not one that's going to be open for American travelers early on. I would put it middle at the best, but more likely probably later on.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mike. maybe Ian, you could take this one. So could you provide guidance on how to comply with testing requirements for international travel? For example, if you need to provide negative test results within 72 hours of arrival, how many days in advance should you plan to take the test?
Yeah, you guys are really giving us some really good questions. Really, the answer to that right now is just staying on top and staying engaged with your supplier, with your partner who's booked, because not only could that information change, it is going to vary by destination. So the simplest answer for that right now is to just review where you're going. And we are doing the same thing where we can provide information as well to you before you're traveling on what kind of testing protocols are in place in the destination that we will arrive into, or the destination, more likely the destination that we'll be departing from, and be able to provide as much guidance and information is available. I would encourage everybody to go to those websites that Mike had mentioned at the very beginning and get that information as well, because it is going to depend on what kind of testing is being used in the particular location, and that can vary by city to city, to airport to airport. There are airports that you can do rapid testing in right now. There are certain places where you will have to plan to go in and give at least 24 to 48 hours to get the test results back. And all of that varies so much, even domestically, all of that varies so much by city to city, airport to airport, state to state, and certainly country to country. So my advice to that one is staying in contact with your supplier, with your operator, getting the information, the advice that's coming from them, as well as then continuing to just look through the resources that are available for the information on what kind of testing is available and specifically where. And between the two, you will certainly have clear answers on that before, well before you depart on your trip, and we'll be able to plan accordingly.
Great, thanks, Ian. Here's another one, probably for you. So how important is it to have the real ID for California, especially if you are traveling, especially if you already have a passport? So comment on that one, if you would.
Yeah, and I'll try to be really quick on this one, because my understanding of the real ID is it's only important if it's important for you, because you need it. You certainly need a real ID to board an airplane. You need it to access any sort of federal building. If you have a passport, then you don't need it. For me personally, I will say that I was traveling domestically quite frequently, and I didn't want to have my passport with me every time I traveled domestically or what have you. So I went ahead and took in all the information to get the real ID. If you don't travel frequently and you're perfectly fine having your passport with you, then as far as I understand it, that's all you need. So it really is just preference. I don't think it's important beyond just the preference and you understanding that if you do not have that real ID, you will need to have that valid passport with you. And just a PSA for everybody, it has gotten significantly better than from the beginning of the pandemic. But if you need to renew a passport, get it taken care of. Because there can still be delays. So if you are looking to travel and planning for later this year, like it looked like many of you are hoping to, check that passport expiration date. Know that many places require at least 6 months validity on it before you arrive. And if you need to get it renewed, get that taken care of.
Great, thanks, Ian. I'm going to jump to the last question that just came in, and this one's from Mike, because Mike talked about travel insurance and the importance of it. So the question is, have you seen changes or do you anticipate changes in travel insurance adaptable to the 72-hour advanced COVID testing? For instance, would insurance cover a positive test circumstance?
Yeah, so the one thing you'll find with travel insurance is it moves at glacial speed. So the fact that this is something new, that you probably won't have any answers from the insurance companies that are solid for a while still. So the answer to the question is we haven't heard any adaptation to the insurance, but we don't expect the insurance to respond to it anytime quickly, unfortunately.
All right, good. Thanks, Mike. Here's an interesting question on vaccines, and I'm not sure. We'll try this one. At what point will 2 COVID vaccines be required for group travel?
I can jump in on that one first. At this point, we are not putting in place a policy where the vaccine is required. We're following we're following the guidelines of the destination and of course the air carrier to get there. If the destination requires 2 COVID vaccines, then of course we would require it as a result of that. But independently of any jurisdictional requirement, at this time, we're not implementing a Contiki vaccine requirement.
Okay, all right. Mike,
It's actually
any comment?
the same with AHI. We're not currently talking about having our own policy of requiring a vaccine, but we'll be following the rules of whatever country the group is going to.
Great. All right, so we saw from our polling question that Europe came in very high in terms of where people want to travel. A question came in on the Q&A. Where would you travel today in Europe? So Ian, Mike, and Nor, weigh in on that. Where would you travel in Europe today? Go ahead, Ian, you start.
Oh, no, I think you should take that one first.
I was planning to study abroad my past fall. So I was going to study abroad in London. So that would be the first place that I would definitely go to.
Fantastic. Okay. Ian, Mike, where would you go?
I'll be happy to go. I personally would be happy to go anywhere in Europe right now. I love many of the countries in Europe and would be happy to go there. The difficulty is going there because none of them are completely open where you can just fly and then start enjoying the destination. Some of them aren't allowing Americans in at all. Others are allowing them in, but you need to quarantine for a while, which means that you would fly over there and spend 7 days, 10 days, 14 days, whatever the requirement is of that country, sitting in a hotel room. So there's not a lot of good options to travel to Europe right now in the current environment, unfortunately.
What do you think, Ian?
Oh, all of it, everywhere, anywhere, any place I could. I don't think I could choose, but similar. I can't say there's one place right now today that has better or worse COVID pandemic requirements or outbreaks, what have you. I think, like many people, it's just the unknowns right now. I don't have one place that would jump up to the top. However, as vaccines continue to roll out, as policies continue to adapt, as case rates hopefully continue to decline, I'm sure there will be a number of places that will be lowering or revising restrictions, especially to U.S. travelers, just as soon as they can. And by all means, I would love to be on a plane to any one of those the second they do.
I'm going to weigh in too. I'm rooting for Italy. Our son was supposed to do study abroad there last fall. We know how that turned out. He's put in for study abroad this fall. We'll see how that happens. So rooting to go back to Italy again. So that's my answer. Okay, we've got our audience is still hanging on because we've got some great questions. One came up in the chat. This is really good. So if a negative COVID test is required for re-entry into the US, if we book a trip with AHI or Contiki, is your organization helping to facilitate obtaining the test while on the trip prior to returning? So Mike, do you want to answer that one on AHI's behalf?
Yeah, the simple answer to that is absolutely. When you book a tour with AHI or with Contiki, and quite honestly, probably most tour operators, your experience for that trip starts at the time that you make your reservation and isn't over until you're back at home. And so during the pre-trip, before you actually leave, there's lots of work being done to make sure that your trip goes smoothly, which would include making sure that all the pieces are in place to be able to get you home with all the requirements met. So absolutely, we'd be taking care of that.
Fantastic. Ian, what's your answer?
Same, exactly the same. And Mike said it exactly right, that our responsibility and our service with you starts the second you book till you return home. So absolutely.
Fantastic. That makes everybody feel really comfortable. So thank you. I'm not sure if this is a question, but one of our listeners stated that the governor's office in New York called my friend who was supposed to quarantine and kept calling for 2 weeks. So I think the point here is that, certainly states are watching, right? Government is watching. And so, depending on where you live and where you're traveling, obviously that's going to be a big factor.
Absolutely. I say, and that's why we don't have trips running through New York. But just anecdotally, it's entertaining and somewhat relevant to this question. We had a trip that was scheduled to run in April in Southeast Asia, and technically, the trip from an operational standpoint could run. The passengers could arrive into country. The passengers could fly home. Facilitating testing to the return would have been fine. The properties and the destinations and the experiences and the meals, everything meets and exceeds requirements. The issue is it was a multi-country Southeast Asia trip, and each time that our group would have crossed the border, they would have required another 14-day quarantine. So and that's the right thing and that's the right thing for the right policy to have in place. And that just tells us that we can't successfully, we can't do the trip as long as those requirements are in place. And the same would happen to New York or anywhere else that has that requirement. If there's that requirement for a 2-week quarantine and they are following up on it as they should, then that makes it a little bit challenging to run a trip or to do a holiday through there. But again, we're all very hopeful that all of that will continue to improve, and we hope everybody who's planning on a trip is indeed looking at what their options are and is reaching out and discussing those with us and deciding what destination might be the best for them in 2021 and 2022. And I will say that kind of as I started off, that the next best thing to actually traveling is talking about it. And I think I actually have to revise that. The next best thing to traveling is planning to travel. And I definitely encourage everybody to do that. The world will open back up again, and there's so much to see and do. And I encourage everybody to, go out and get those bucket list items, whether it be London or Italy or Mike and I. We're just going to hit every country in Europe. I tell you what.
Well, you can see from the polling questions and the responses that there is a lot of pent up energy that is going to go into travel. And, having you two, our trusted experts, our partners here to answer those questions and make people feel good is just so important. And just for our audience, we're planning on having more of these throughout the year. So we want to bring you the most current information so that when you get ready to book and you're ready to travel, what's going on. So these sessions have been extremely helpful. I want to thank both Mike and Ian for just an awesome hour. We've gotten great comments on this in the chat. I think we've got all our Q&A answered. I'm pretty sure we got all your questions answered, so that was positive. Just want to remind everybody to go to alumni.uci.edu, click on experience, and then on current events to see more events like this and other ones that we have coming up. And appreciate everybody joining us today. Want to wish you all a great day. And thanks again for being part of this awesome discussion that we had. Thanks to Mike and Ian for all of your insight. So have a wonderful day, everybody. Take care.